Hey everybody, it's Mark again, and I hope y'all enjoyed part one of me working on the uh, 1970 or late 1960s um, E Schmeckenbecher Hofbrauhaus beer drinkers cuckoo clock. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Hofbrauhaus, but anyway, this is part two, and we're going to put this movement together. If you don't have these little legs that you can put on the stands, you can use a bowl, or I used to use this piece of plumbing. It's really nice because you can put the movement plate on this side of the piece of plumbing or on this side of the piece of plumbing, depending on how big your plate is. You know, that is too big, so you use this side of the piece of plumbing. But you can use, like I said, a bowl. You've probably seen me use this before. This is actually I installed a deadbolt in a door, and I use this thing right here for smaller movements. But these legs come in really handy. As long as you have the right kind. And I've got videos where you can take bolts and cut notches out in the bolts. You will notice that these legs, the notch goes in about 2/3 of the way. And if yours is not going in 2/3 of the way, you might want to cut it so it does, because for those that don't go 2/3 of the way, when you go to tighten it up, it slips off your part. So if you can't afford these little legs, and they cost like $25 or so on Time Savers, you can go out and buy some bolts, and I've got a video where you cut notches in the bolt. All right, and so and I tell you in my video that I made these wrong, that I should have made it where I tighten the bottom part of it, but it still works. So anyway, we're putting this back together. I got all the parts cleaned up. I put Renaissance wax on the rear of the movement. That way I could touch it. It doesn't leave permanent fingerprints. First thing what we have to do is put this piece right here on. And we already took toothpicks through all the holes. And the reason why you do that, when you put this has got to do with the cuckoo shutoff. So when you put this on, you want it to be able to, the design of it causes it to drop like this. And if it's not dropping like this, your clock might not shut off the cuckoo. And it takes an E-clip, and I gotta find the E-clip for it to keep it on. And then I like working on the time side first. Time side, great wheel. Remember, I put a brand new plastic wheel. I told you if this is not tight, the clock will tick, but the hands will never move. And if you separate your parts, where time side and strike side, it will help you out if you not used to working on the clocks. And by the way, you want to check out the space on the plastic wheel to make sure it is catching the center wheel with a minute wheel and center arbor, and without touching the movement. And in this case, I think I want to push it down just a little bit more, because it's almost touching the movement. And so that I'm happy with. Second wheel, and I've already cleaned up all the parts. And then the escapement wheel. Remember, pinion gears connect to wheels. So if you don't have your pictures, if you didn't take pictures, as long as you remember that pinion gears connect to wheels, the great wheel connected to the second wheel pinion gear, the second wheel connected to the escapement wheel pinion gear. So going over to the time side now, the great wheel, and remember we took the Pac-Man off, so we have to put this down, and I'm going to put this down first. Great wheel for the second side wheel is going to catch this second wheel pinion gear. And the second wheel has got this piece right here on it. It needs to be in the 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock position. If you put it in the 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock position, it's not going to cuckoo right. So make sure you put it in the, and you basically have to put the second wheel on first before you put the great wheel. Make sure you put this piece in the 9 o'clock to the 3 o'clock position. Third wheel with warning pin. Again, the pinion gear is going to catch the second wheel. And it doesn't matter where you put that warning pin, because we'll put it where it needs to go later. And then the governor pin. And you want to flick this governor pin to make sure it's not too loose. If it spins when you flick it, you need to tighten it up. And the way you tighten it up is you take it out of the fan. On this particular wheel, you take it out of the fan and you push this middle part down some. That middle part catches the notch on the arbor here. So if you need to tighten it up, and reverse if you need to loosen it. If cuckoo will cuckoo really fast. It's not catching. I might have put it in the reverse order. It might need to be pushed down to catch. It goes like that. Now it's catching. As long as it turns when you flick it, it's good. Pinion gear lines up with the third wheel. And then we have to worry about this, what's called a two-arm bell crank. And I gotta find it. Which is this part right here. This is the part that helps stop the clock from, helps stop it cuckooing. And the two-arm bell crank, this part goes on the outside of this tab right here that is part of the bird post. This curved part goes underneath the second wheel. If this part is on the inside of that tab, the bird will not come back in. And I'm just noticing it looks like the post broke, so I'll probably have to replace. I will have to replace that. I don't know how it broke. Strange things have happened. And then I took the lift arms off, so I need to put those back on. And this lift arm here is the high note lift arm, and it goes on first. I take that because the gong is on. I gotta put the low note lift arm on first. And then the high note lift arm. So, and now the virgin crutch assembly. Remember you took your Dremel or whatever and you cleaned up the pallets and you cleaned up the pivots for the virgin crutch assembly. You just sit it down where it belongs, and then you're going to beat it through this hole right here. And the whole object here is to get all 4 nuts started. Once you get all 4 nuts started, you're almost home free. Just started. You don't have to tighten them down. You will tighten them down gradually as you put the pivots in their respected holes. And work on the time side first, and you can use tweezers, you can use a chopstick or whatever you want to use to put the pivots in the pivot holes. Putting a little bit of pressure on the plate. You have to work the pivots around so they pop in the holes. And the bottom nut can be tightened all the way down now. Now the escapement wheel, but the virgin crutch assembly needs to go in. The escapement wheel. And I'm trying to do this over the camera, and I can't hardly see. Tighten that nut down a little bit more. Now we're going to go over to the strike side. the hammer is creating issues. So put that in, the high note lever and the low note levers. And now we work on the pivots. Right. Need to put the last nut on. I tell you, the case for this clock's got a lot of damage. It's not going to be perfect when I'm done, but it'll be presentable. The 2-horn bell crank is normally the one that gives you the most trouble. You can look at the front, and you can see the second wheel is not in its pivot. So you just gently push it over until it falls into place. And the third wheel with warning pin is not in its place, and neither is the governor pin. I got the nut too tight, so I loosen it up so I can put the wheels in their place. And once they fall into place, you just want to verify everything and give it a quick turn to see if the wheels are going to turn, which they do. Come over here to the the time side, give it a turn, which it does, and now you want to tighten up the nuts. Now, it's very important that you check for end shake in every one of the wheels, to include the virgin crutch assembly. This is end shake, front to back of the movement. Bushing wear something else. With these regular 25 movements, it's very easily that they will get bent. The plates might get a little bend in them. Before I started this video, the second wheel on the time side didn't have any end shake whatsoever, and it was an easy fix. All you have to do is put a screwdriver underneath the pivot area for the second wheel and gently pry down on both the front and the rear of the plates, and that will provide you end shake. If you don't have end shake, your clock will not run. And you have to do the same thing to the strike side. Check for end shake. Every wheel has to have back and forth movement. Now, remember we took the Pac-Man off, which is, I know a lot of people get upset because I call it a Pac-Man, but it looks like a Pac-Man, and it's easier for me to say than gathering cam with gathering pin. Okay, but it's easy to put back on. Once I find it. Okay, but I don't want to put it on yet. What I want to do is put the lift lock lever on. Lift lock lever is activated by one of these hurricane symbols, shark fins, whatever you want to call it. You will notice that one is longer than the other. The longer one is for the hour, the shorter one is for the half hour. So on the shorter one, the lift lock lever just barely moves up for the clock to strike cuckoo, whatever you want to call it, one time. On the hour one, it lifts up the lift lock lever, which in turn lifts up this right here, which is the rack stop lever. You see that? That happens on the hour. If this tab right here that catches that hurricane symbol, if it's bent, or if this arm and this arm separation distance is off, it won't cuckoo on the half hour, and it won't cuckoo on the hour. Because on the hour, what happens, this pushes the rack stop lever up too much, and the hurricane symbol gets stuck. If the separation distance between this lever and this lever is too much, or if this tab is bent down too much. And so I've got videos that explains all that, but I just was wanting to cover it really quickly here. But I need to put the E-clips on, the compression clips, but I want to show you what you do to put this Pac-Man on. The third wheel with warning pin, I'm having trouble keeping up with my pointers. The third wheel with warning pin has to hit the outside of this tab on the rack stop lever. And so that's what we are wanting to do. So when it hits the outside of that tab, the pin right here needs to be fully seated in the Pac-Man's mouth. If it's not, you rotate it while you're holding the third wheel. You see I got my finger in there, that way stuff doesn't move. And so and then you just push the Pac-Man on. It's compression fit on. If you push it too much, like I did just there, just to show y'all. Sorry, I didn't. If you push it too much, if you push it too far down, the rack stop lever is going to hit it, and it's not going to work properly. There I have the Pac-Man in the wrong spot, so I need to do this again. I need to get the third wheel with warning pin to touch the outside of this tab. It's just barely missing it. I thought I was recording, and I didn't have my camera on my SD card, and my regular camera doesn't have enough memory. So we're going to do this again. You put the lift lock lever on. The lift lock lever is controlled by what Cheryl calls the hurricane symbol. Some people call it a shark fin. There's a half hour, which is the shorter one, and the hour, which is the longer one. If the tab that touches that hurricane symbol is bent too much, your clock might not be able to cuckoo on the hour. If the distance between this arm and this arm is the wrong distance, it might not cuckoo on the half hour. Or if it's spread too far apart, it might not be able to cuckoo on the hour, because what happens on the hour, the longer shark fin hurricane symbol lifts the lift lock lever, which lifts the rack stop lever, and when it's spread too far apart, the rack stop lever is going to come over here and it's going to get stuck, and so it won't. The mini hand won't be able to turn because there's too much pressure on it. So if your clock is not cuckooing on the hour or the half hour, you're going to have to change the distance between this arm and this arm, or B, change the tab. It could be bent wrong, and that's caused by when people turn the hands backwards when they're not supposed to, when the clock goes into warning or when it's cuckooing. When you put these compression clips on, even though they were all the way touching the plate and I had to tap this thing a little bit to bring them away from the plate, in my experience, you don't want them touching the plate. So you want to be able to, when the lift lock lever is activated, it needs to be able to drop by itself, just like that. And if it's touching the plate, it won't be able to drop by itself. Same way with the rack stop lever. And so you put the spring back on the rack stop lever, and in this case, I already got the Pac-Man on. All you had to do was put it on, compress it, and you want the third wheel warning pin to be touching the outside of this tab on the rack stop lever. And when it's touching the outside of that tab, you want this pin to fall directly into the what I call the Pac-Man's mouth. I know it's called the gathering cam with gathering pin, but it looks like a Pac-Man. It's easier to say Pac-Man. So when you go to put that on, you put the third wheel warning pin so it's touching that tab, and you shove your finger down in the movement. That way the wheel can't spin, and then you take a pair of pliers, put this thing on, use your fingers, push it down, but you want to leave a gap between the Pac-Man and the rack stop lever, because if it's touching the rack stop lever won't be able to move. And if it's not directly in the Pac-Man's mouth, with your fingers shoved in there so the wheels can't rotate, you just take a pair of pliers and you turn it and to where you want it to go. It's that simple. I don't take them off that often because it's a hole. It's a brass hole. You take that hole, Pac-Man off, put it back on, take it off, put it back on. You're going to wear that hole out, and then you're going to have to either put a bushing in that hole or replace the Pac-Man. And so that's the reason I don't take them off. And so even though this is broken, you need to do a function test. And I'm going to turn the great wheel, and I'm going to trip the lift lock lever, and you can see the bird would come out, and then when it's done cuckooing, it goes back in. And I use a lot of force when I'm doing this stuff. The 2-arm bell crank, when it cuckoos, the cuckoo bird rocking lever grabs a hold of that pin on the 2-arm bell crank, which allows the bird to come out, and while it cuckoos. And when it's done, there's a tab on the rack stop lever that hits that cuckoo bird rod locking lever when it's done cuckooing. It hits it, and when it does, I'm going to go ahead and hit it with this toothpick to show you what happens. It's going to let go of that 2-arm bell crank. Did you see that? And that's what that tab on that rack stop lever does. So if your clock is continuing to cuckoo, it very well could be that that tab is not touching that cuckoo bird locking lever, and you might have to bend that tab down. I've got videos on all this stuff. All you have to do is search on my channel. So the function test for this is good. So next step, before I put the rack and snail and the wheel on, I need to oil the movement. When you oil the movement, I use a toothpick. You could use whatever you want. I cut the end off the toothpick. That way, if you don't cut the end off the toothpick, when you dip the toothpick in the oil is going to be up higher on the toothpick. So cut the end off. You're only oiling the pivots. Just a minute drop of oil. If you get too much oil on the plate, just wipe it off. And then you're also oiling the pallets on the virgin crutch assembly. That's the thing that rocks back and forth on the escapement wheel. You're oiling what touches the escapement wheel, both the entry and the exit pallets. And then all you do is just rotate the escapement wheel around a little bit. That way it disseminates the oil on the escapement wheel where it needs to be. You don't need to oil the gong you're only oiling the stuff that's constantly spinning when activated, such as on the strike side, it spins when it's activated. The time side is constantly spinning, and so that's what's important. If your clock is making noise, it's probably because you need to put a minute drop of oil on the pallets of the Burge and Crutch assembly. And this is the Burge and Crutch assembly right here. But you're oiling the pallets, like I said, the stuff that touches the escapement wheel. And as you can see, with very little pressure, it's ticking back and forth. I'm sorry if this is going to be a long video, but I like discussing things in detail when I do my videos. A lot of people get upset because I make long videos, and so be it. But you put the rack on, again, you cleaned out the holes of the toothpick, you put it on, you're just going to barely put it on. You're going to put the a snail on, okay, but I'm going to put this intermediate wheel on. And then I want to make it to where it just got through cuckooing on the hour. It just got through striking on the hour, which is right there. It just the hurricane symbol lifted up the lift lock lever and it dropped. Okay, so now with the rack and the snail, you put it on together basically, and I'm going to put it to where this tab this position right here is the 12 o'clock position, okay? So it just got through striking on the hour. I think that's too far away. I'm going to move it 1 tooth. And I'll explain that here in a second. Okay, so that right there, I'm going to count the hours, okay? And you want to make sure that this tab is fully engaged in these teeth as you do your function test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and it stops. Okay, so it just got through cuckooing 12 times. So with pressure on the great wheel, I'm going to rotate the this intermediate wheel so it goes to the half hour. And on the half hour, this is going to move out of the way just a little bit, but it's not going to allow the rack to drop. But the one time. There's the half hour. So the goal here is at the 1 o'clock, I want it to be on top of this one section right here of the snail. So turning this, it landed on the 1, so I'm happy with that. When you set this up, for the 12 o'clock position, if you were too close to the mouth of the snail, this is called a snail because it looks like a conical snail. I've got a video that explains all these parts. If you got it too close to the snail, at 5 minutes till the hour, your clock, until 1 o'clock, and only 5 minutes till 1 o'clock, your clock will stop. And that's because you put the snail on wrong when you set everything up. Because what happens is on the half hour, in this case it's not going to do it because I got the snail over, but if I was to rotate this just a little bit, on the half hour, the clock strikes, but when it on the 1 o'clock position, it goes into warning, and this gets stuck on the left side of this snail. Okay, so that it goes into warning at 5 minutes till the hour, and as time is ticking, it's putting pressure on the snail, then your clock stops. I had a clock that happened to me, and it's because I didn't set up this snail right. So anyway, on the hour, and I'm going to take all the stuff back off to see where the pin is. I want the clock to just got through clicking the hour, and I'm going to put this stuff back on and do the same thing that I just got through doing for the 12 o'clock position. Again, you have to put the rack and the snail on at the same time because of this wire right here. I want to move it over just 1 notch. If you got it over to the left too far, depending on the snails, some of the snails are cut different, and they're over time they get worn out. It could strike twice on the 12 o'clock position. It could strike 12 times. It'll strike 12, then it'll strike 12:30, then it'll strike 12 again. So you got to make sure you do these function tests. And you see how this didn't go directly into the notch. And that's because the tab on this rack that hits the snail needs to be adjusted. Now it looks better to me. I'm going to go from 12 o'clock all the way back to 1 o'clock doing a function test, and that's what you want to do. It's easier to do these function tests to check everything out. You want to make sure the bird comes forward. You want to make sure that the two-arm bell crank gets away from the cuckoo shut-off lever when it's done cuckooing. You want to do all these function tests and before you are done with the movement. And when I'm happy with the function test, that's when I'll put these clips back on. I forgot to talk about this wire right here. If this wire is too close to the rack, when it's done cuckooing, the next time it trips, if this was bent over some, the rack wouldn't be able to drop. So you have to make sure that this wire is away from the rack to allow the rack to drop. If it's too far away from the rack, as the gathering cam with gathering pin, and that's called a gathering pin or Pac-Man, as it rotates, if it's too far away, it's not going to be able to lift up the rack. Because this is what happens. The gathering cam with gathering pin comes over, it grabs the rack, which in turn lifts up the rack, and you will see this tab walk away from the rack, and then it drops back down as the gathering cam with gathering pin moves away from the rack, holding it until the gathering cam with gathering pin rotates again. That's how the system works. You see what I'm saying? Gathering cam with gathering pin grabbing a tooth, it's lifting it up. The tab for the rack stop lever is away from the rack until the pin raises the rack up, and then the tab goes back in the teeth. If the tab is bent wrong, it could grab two teeth, okay? If this is not falling directly into the teeth, if it was touching, let's say, the outside of the tooth at the 12 o'clock position, your clock will strike 13 or possibly even 14 times. And that's why you have to make sure that this tab is in the teeth and not on the outside of every function test that you do. And again, it's got to do with this tab, this tail, the tab on the tail of the rack. This is called the tail, this is called the rack, and this is the tab on the tail of the rack. And so I can manipulate it and change where this falls on the rack. It's a spare movement of mine, okay? As you can see, this is falling inside the teeth. But if I was to bend this, now it's falling way up here because this is not hitting right, because I bent the crap out of it. Let's see if I can straighten it back out. I bent the crap out of it. Now it's falling behind the snail, so your clock is going to cuckoo. It's not even going to cuckoo because the gathering pen cannot catch the rack until it gets up in there. So anyway, you have to look at every bit of this stuff when you're doing a function test, and if it's not falling correctly, you got to, the first thing you need to look at is this tail of the rack. I forgot to mention, when you're oiling the movement, you also want to oil the clicks on the great wheels, both the time side and the strike side. But after you're satisfied with a function test, you put the E-clips and the E-clip in the washer. And this convex washer, honestly, I don't believe it matters which way it goes up, whether it goes up or down. It doesn't matter. I've put them both ways. They come from the factory with the convex up. Why it's designed that way, I have no idea. When you put the clock into the case, if the rack happens to drop, and if you don't have this tail bent right on the if the snail drops and you don't have this tail bent right on the rack, the rack will drop behind the tail. So make sure that you take the time to bend this tail out some, so it doesn't fall behind the snail when you're putting the movement in the clock. Anyway, I got the function test done. The very last thing I need to do as part of the function test is put the 8-point star wheel on, and you just got your cuckooing. And so what I want to do, I got the screw loose. What I want to do is put the tab of the 8-point star wheel just a little bit away from the hammer tab. If you got it touching, when the clock goes into warning, all these wheels will move. And when it goes into warning at 5 minutes till the hour, 25 minutes past the hour, the gong will actually hit the hammer. And so you want it to barely be off that lever, and then you tighten up the screw. And you want to make sure that every one of these tabs are at a 90-degree angle from the plate. And you also want to make sure that if the 8-point star wheel is bent, it could be touching the plates. So you want to make sure when you put it on that you don't put it on too far. I need to back this one up a little bit. I want a little bit of space between it and the plate. So now you can see there's space between the 8-point star wheel and the plate. So now you want to do a function test to get the system to operate. And when it's done, the high note and low note lever occupy a space all by itself, and the hammer is occupying a space all by itself, and there's still a space. If it's wrong, the low note lever will occupy the space with the hammer, and when it cuckoos, it's going to go coo, gong, coo. So you don't want that. You want gong, coo, coo. Just like this. Gong, coo, coo. gong, coo, coo. Let's try this again. Gong, coo, coo. One more time. Gong, coo, coo. Gong, coo, coo. It's not doing the cuckoo. The low note lever is not catching the. It's on top of the high note lever tab, and so I gotta fix that. It needs to go underneath the high note lever tab. So I'm gonna raise the high note lever tab a little bit. Now watch it. If I can get it to work. Gong, coo, coo. Gong, coo, coo. Gong, coo, coo. Gong, coo, coo. Sorry, my camera man sucks. Let's try that again. Again, the low note lever and high note lever are acting up. I need to fix it. Stand by. Gong, coo, coo. 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 And so again, the hammer is occupying a space all by itself. The tab is away from the tab on the 8-point star wheel, and the high note lever and the low note lever are occupying a space all by themselves. I'm going to finish putting the movement together. I still have to put the levers on that trip the music, and then I'll put this movement into the case off camera. This video is going to be pretty long as it is, and I have to repair some bellows. I got several videos of me repairing bellows. I'm not going to show you during this video. If you need to learn how to repair bellows, search my YouTube channel for bellows. When you're on my channel, there's a search bar. You have to be on my channel, and then there's a search bar, and if you're using your TV, your Roku, all you have to do is be on my channel, press the microphone, and say bellow. And every video that I got bellow in the title will come up. If you're on your computer, you use the search bar. If you're on your phone, it's the same thing. I went ahead and changed the music comb. This one had a broken tooth, and I had spare parts. But I had to do another function test to get this to work. And the very end of this tab right here, you can see I got it bent forward. And the reason I bent it forward is this has got to have, this brass piece has got to have an arch in it. That way when it comes out of the hole, it gets on top of this raised section here. But when the very last note of the music stops, is where you want the governor fan to stop. When it was going in the hole, it was still catching teeth. So I had to bend that tab forward so it would go a little bit further before the governor band was caught by this tab right here. It's easy to get out, and when you push it out, it gets onto that raised when you push it out, I get too much crap in my hands. When you push it out, it gets onto that raised section, and it rotates. The beer mug comes out of the door. This wire's coming up on the notch of the wheel, the Pac-Man's mouth, which will go back, bring the beer mug in, and this notch is fixing to fall into that hole. When it fell into the hole, there was still a couple of teeth that needed to be plucked, and so now it's right where I want it. It's time to put the music box back into the case. So the clock needs some bellow work done to it, and here's the high note bellow. And I keep the wires connected to each other until I'm ready to work on them and put them back in the clock. Now, I order my material from eBay, and it comes with these instructions. Well, these instructions are confusing as crap to me, so I don't use these instructions. It comes, I order 20 sheets, and it comes in 3-inch by 8-inch sheets, and I cut them in half. And the first step that you have to do is clean off all the old bellow material. And I use Tyvek. Whether you want to use leather, it's up to you. It cost me around $25 to include shipping for 20 sheets. And when you cut them in half, that's enough to do 40 bellows or 20 sets of bellows, to include the trapezoid bellows. A lot of people think that the bigger the bellow, the wider the paper has to be. And from my experience, doesn't matter whether it's a great big bellow or a small bellow, this 1.5-inch wide paper works. Once you clean it off, I grabbed the wrong bellow. That's the low note bellow. This is the bellow I was wanting to work on. You have a staple here that the wire attaches to. This decorative paper, I don't have any other decorative paper to replace it with. I don't really care what it looks like, to tell you the truth, as long as it functions. Now, if you want to buy decorative paper to make it all look pretty, again, that's totally up to you, and on what you do. It's your bellow. You can do what you want to it. I'm just going to get this bellow to function. And I have found that even though I'm scraping all this stuff off, and it's easier to remove the staples. So here I'm putting a line where the staple is going to be. It's important that you understand that the staple goes this way and not that way. That way the wire itself fits in and then lifts the bellow. If you got it turned sideways, it doesn't work as well. So anyway, I'm going to take this staple out, or try to take the staple out, and put it back in afterwards. I like using my Dremel to do the final cleanup. There's the top part, it's cleaned up. Now I have to clean up the bottom part. And before you get too involved, you want to make sure that the bellow works. So hopefully you can see this. It's not working. And the reason why it's not working, there's a dirt dauber's nest in it. So I'm going to have to clean all that crap out to get it to work. I might have to take the plastic part off, because this thing is full of dirt and it's never going to work. So I'm going to have to take this off to clean it up. So stand by and let me do that. So tapping it and then taking a pair of tweezers and getting the dirt out. And there's some more in there. I put it under my sink and washed it out, and I thought I got it all, but apparently not. I'm gonna have to wash it some more because there's some more dirt in there. And then using my hair dryer. This section right here is plastic, and it fits over. It's got little ridges that fit inside this wooden chute. But you can see there's more mud from the dirt daubers. However, it now makes noise. So I'm gonna go back to my sink and wash this some more, and then take my hair dryer to it. And I talk about the screws. When I pour water in this thing, you will see water bubbling up at this section right here. You see the water coming out of that screw hole? It just, it's a reminder that the more holes that you put in this wooden chute, it's going to change your tune. So always use the same hole. Bill them in if you got too many holes. Glue them, put some masking tape on it. Do whatever it takes. So you're not using a bunch of holes. Now, in the process of cleaning all the dirt dauber out of this, I broke this piece off, but you can easily glue it back on, and it works. And so I need to glue this piece on, and then I'm going to start putting the Tyvek material on.